treasurer a completed ANC reimbursement form in supporting unaltered receipt or invoice.
Are we all, I think we should move that as amendment, but is that, so we're saying line 23 would be amended to say supporting unaltered receipt.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
Do you mind putting that in motion?
So I will move to amend the reimbursement policy for line 23 to read, treasurer a completed ANC 5D reimbursement form in supporting, comma, unaltered receipt or invoice no less than 7.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and properly seconded that line 23 be amended as read. Any further discussion? All for that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That amendment passes by a vote of 5-0. I'll just, before we vote on the actual policy itself, just one other friendly amendment, Commissioner Schott. Line 5, this is very nitpicky. Line 5 says Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners is actually apparently, I just looked it up, the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. So I would just move that we, on line 5, change the word commissioners to commissions.
I'll second.
That's moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Great. Just want to give everyone an opportunity. Any further changes to the policy?
So that was amended for line 5 and line 20.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Shropshire, is there anything about the reimbursement form itself that you wanted to tell folks?
So on the reimbursement form, you just complete the, I think it's kind of self-explanatory on the front, but when they're, for it's saying expense category, if you see the reverse, there's like a list of 9 different expense categories, and when you complete it, select the appropriate one. If in question, then just consult me.
Any further questions or discussion before we vote on the policy itself? Seeing none, Commissioner Shropshire, I think you originally moved this. Do you mind just restating your motion?
I move to adopt the reimbursement policy
As amended?
as amended.
Is there a second?
I second it.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the reimbursement policy as we've just amended it. Unless there's any further discussion. Seeing no further discussion, all for adopting the amended policy, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The amended policy passes by a vote of 5-0. Congratulations, Commissioner Shropshire.
Thank you, everybody.
And commission. We have a budget and we have a reimbursement policy. Next up is adoption of the community grant policy. I think this is my item. So just to briefly introduce it, this is again the same grant policy that I shared at the last meeting. I borrowed policy language from several other commissions throughout the city and did my best to make it my own, make it our own, excuse me. So the basic intent here, just for anyone that doesn't know, ANCs have that $16,000 per year that we get. We have that for copies and that sort of thing, but we do also have that as codified in the law for the purpose of issuing local grants. Those local grants have a lot of restrictions on them, and specifically grants can only be used for the same thing that we as a commission can vote to spend money on, which means, for example, things like food generally cannot be used for grants. Entertainment, block parties, all of those sorts of things are not able to be used by a grant, and that's not our policy. That's the city. That's the DC code. So with that, you've all had the policy now for over 2 weeks, so I won't read it to you. It's also fairly long. It does outline sort of a review process and gives people an actual application to fill out. So I believe the intention of this would be that we would post both the policy and the application on our website. get some applications. I think where this came from originally was, I know that many of us as commissioners have been talking about this for the better part of our term. I actually did share this with Commissioner Henderson when she and I first sat down in December of 2014, my interest in doing this, and I think she was not interested in pursuing that at the time. That may have changed, I won't speak for that. But I could share that with this item does go way back in terms of my own interest, and I think in the whole meetings and just informal discussions, I think many of us here have expressed the same thing since then. It also comes from, at least Commissioner Blacknell and I are aware of several organizations in our areas who would like to get some grant funding to do some programming over the summer, which is something that I think will probably really help with some of the crime issues that we're having. So with that, are there any questions about this before we kind of formally move it to the floor?
Yes. So I didn't see anything about like the actual review process. Like how are grant applications gonna be reviewed? Because I think we need to be as specific as possible. Like, is the body of ANC commissioners are gonna be community people? You know, what is the actual process for reviewing the grants? Who's gonna be involved? What time frame? That sort of thing.
So I'm seeing that it's not probably clearly laid out in here. I think, so at the end of the day, a grant application, right, starts off on the application, and then this commission does have to vote on it before the funds can be released. What happens between the initial application and the final approval from us is up for us to decide, and I wanted to leave it open for discussion here today. I know from just my own research, like some commissions do have a special committee that reviews them first and gives a recommendation to the commission. So that's certainly an option. Or if we don't want to have a committee and want to have applicants submit them to us for discussion and approval, we can do that too. The way it's phrased on the form right now is that the actual application gets submitted to all 7 commissioners by our DC government email. And we would then, I would presume, the chair would put it on the next monthly meeting for discussion and approval.
Because I think that I think it would be helpful to clarify what the selection criteria are.
I think it should be submitted at a time so it could be reviewed. So, you know, a certain 2 meetings within 60 days. When you're not submitting a grant, you want to be voted on within 30 days. So with the review of it had to be in public. So if we had a grant committee, they wouldn't meet the same night we met, but they would meet on time and they would review and make the recommendation. But then there should be some time allowed for us to review the recommendation and see what the grant. So it has to be some kind of, at least a 2-week lead time before it's voted on. And I don't know if anybody would be submitting real time-sensitive grants, unless it's.
Well, they have to adhere to the submission timeframe. So are we thinking of having this as an open, like year-round, like a rolling process, like as ideas or people think of proposals or projects that they want to do, they come to us, or is there a certain time of the year that we'll be reviewing or accepting proposals, and then there's a reviewing period, and then a awarding period?
I will say I again intentionally left that open. I wanted to have a discussion and for us to figure that out
just
together.
throwing it out there.
No, I think they're great questions. I think the way it's written right now, it is on a rolling basis. As we receive applications, we approve or deny them. We review and then approve or deny them as they sort of come in. That is one way to go. I also know of commissions that only open up grants during a certain part of their year. And prior to that, they as a commission decide what are the priorities and sort of the things that they want to fund. They put that out and ask for applicants to sort of adhere to those listed priorities. I don't know which one is better in terms of timeliness and easier to track.
I mean, this might be one way to engage the community in terms of getting feedback and what types of things would they like, do they need to do in the community? And then that can help inform us if we choose to do an option where we're putting parameters around it. Then we can say, okay, this year we're focused on this. Next year, you know, in the future we will focus on this and designate times, because I think it'll make it easier for whoever has to review them. So that it's not always like, oh, I submitted my proposal yesterday, when are you gonna get back to us? You know, just to add some structure to it.
So what I've kind of written from this discussion is there was like a need to add kind of a process and timeline.
Yeah.
And then, but I also heard you say selection criteria. I just wondered, is that something different or is that the same?
So I was looking at, where it said criteria for evaluating grants. I'm thinking of like coming up with the form that says like, you know, did this meet this? You know, what are things that we're looking for in terms, because we want to be able to publicly say, this is why this was funded and this one wasn't. You know, maybe you weren't clearly defining or didn't answer the things, you know, the first thing in an application, at least when I'm at work, is like, did they follow the rules? Did they answer all the questions? Did they submit all the, so we just thinking about, the merit of the application, thinking about, does it meet a need that we need in the community right now? You know, like those kind of things.
But you also said, is it something that the commission want to focus on also?
Yeah, does it meet a need in the community? Like, is it addressing something that we believe that our community needs? And that we should know, and if we don't know, the community can tell us, like, this is what a need is. They have to demonstrate need, you know, in their application.
No, what I'm saying, but well, you answer my question. All right, so focus, even though we might have a focus, but still get the focus of what the community might think is important.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that, the one first step might be to inquire from the community, like, what are some ideas, what are areas that you wanna focus on, and that can help inform what we wanna focus on, you know?
So, I'm gonna give an example, you might have a cleanup. Could someone put a grant in to buy mulch for the curb?
Or then we're gonna, let's keep in mind that individuals can't apply for the grant.
It says it not individual, but the block, so the block,
It has to be an organization.
oh, so a block could not, so, because a block wouldn't necessarily have a 501c designation
Trinidad Neighborhood Association could apply for a cleanup grant
for a block.
for the neighborhood, and they can work with.
No,
the
I'm just
block.
saying that, so a Pacific block goes to the Trinidad Neighborhood Association. We want to clean up and put mulch on the curb. Get all the trash up, we got dirt, so we're gonna mulch the whole
Mhm.
curb.
But, I mean, just to let you know, you can get that free from DPW. They can drop out a load of mulch and you can unload it. You know?
Well, I was gonna, for example, if a block wanted to do something, so just give me
So,
something else a
as
block might
long
wanna
as-
do. A block's not a 501c3, but they go to the Trinidad Neighborhood Association, and the neighborhood says,
So the
okay,
block would need to work with the Trinidad Neighborhood Association to come up with some proposal about doing this type of project. And it could be that they wanna, Adam, you had some examples of projects, like you mentioned something in the email. Children,
Yeah, so
like a youth-
so programming I think is really good example. So we have someone in one of the civic associations wants to do a Spanish language class once a week. Is that what you're asking? Like what we
yeah,
can use
like
it for?
examples of,
Yeah, so any sort of class, I believe, is eligible, as long as the class, the piece of the organization is you have, like, the city code says we cannot give it to individuals, it just has to be an organization. what the policy says on top of that is that we're gonna require a C3. Because without a C3, like, you and I could say we're an organization, there's no like registration required, right? And so I think the concern was how, like, it's not really an organization without a 501c3.
Okay. So in that Spanish class, so then when you give it that grant, does that teacher get paid?
Yeah, that's why they would be probably, I mean, that could be one reason why they're asking for the money, to pay the teacher to come and teach the kids.
So then do we follow up to make sure that that teacher receives a 1099 or a W-2?
I don't know the answer to that question.
So I think the follow-up that we're responsible for is to ensure that the money that it was supposed to be spent on resulted in the benefit, right? So that's, so we're not hiring.
No, I'm just saying, but would you want to see that at the end of the grant, that 1099s be issued? Or W-2s be issued for that individual who taught the class? So we do the grant, and then at the end, do we get any feedback? How do we know it's completed? How do we know the item was done? How do we?
So that's section 4, right? So the grantee compliance or accountability.
Right.
So within 60 days, they have to file a report about what they did, and that's how we know that the funds serve their purpose.
And so where they spend the money?
Yep. And they have to, that's further down, I think that's under the procedures for dispensing grant funds at the very end. So we don't just like write a check. They have to, as part of that 60-day follow-up, they have to provide a receipt or, and I think in the case of a teacher's pay, I think that receipt would probably be in the form of a paycheck, right? And they
Or
have to provide
payroll
that.
or something.
Right, and it's specifically, it's the organization that we gave the grant to. So in your example, if you wanted to have, I'm gonna try and mix your example. So if you wanted to have a Spanish class taught, in some public area in your SMD, either the organization itself could apply, or they could apply to Trinidad Neighborhood Association, who in turn would apply to us. So TNA is the custodian of the money. They're also the ones responsible. So they're in the middle. So they're responsible for filing all the grant reports. They're also the recipients of our fund. They are responsible for paying the teacher, whoever else, and ensuring all of the tax
And
documents.
then we, after they paid it, then we reimburse them at the end of the grant.
TNA.
TNA. at the
Yes.
end.
After they've given us proof that they met whatever we asked them to do. So I might suggest this, but I think what I've heard, unless there's further items, I would be very happy to add in some clear process and timeline language. And also I think it sounds like Commissioner Shropshire, under the criteria for evaluating grants, maybe create a rubric form that we already have a form for how you're going to submit your application, but maybe we also need a form for how we're going to evaluate it. And that is all sort of done before we adopt this, so that everyone can see it all in one place at one time.
Okay.
So I'm happy to make those edits and bring this back up with the.
Well, can you circulate to us, because I could probably add some, I wanna see.
Yeah, I would love, if anybody wants to do any of those things, that would be great. But yeah, I would love any feedback. I'm gonna be unavailable for the next week or so I probably won't be able to get to you too far in advance of the next meeting, but as soon as I have it, I will definitely share it. Or if anybody wants to take any of those items now and suggest edits as it is, everyone has a soft copy, I can send it around again. I would also just love any edits now from what you've seen tonight. It's
I
our
don't have
policy.
any edits now, beyond what I just recommended.
You don't have any?
I don't have any, written edits, wordsmithing, I don't have that.
Okay, well, if anyone thinks about it, feel free to send it over email, and I'm happy to incorporate it. It's our policy, not mine. I just wanted to give us something to react to. So, thank you for the reactions.
Thanks for drafting.
This is really, Commissioner Shropshire, the date, give it a time. List the deadline.
A review period. you know.
I guess as I do that though, are we all comfortable with the idea of a sort of rolling?
Buffy, I'll talk about.
Between January and Mitchell grants.
Well, we'll have to figure it out, what that's gonna be.
Well, that's my question, so I wanna make sure that if I rewrite a timeline, that the way it's phrased right now is that there's not sort of like one timeline where it's sort of open and closed. It's that, the way I'm thinking about approaching it is, there's an application period, there's an application that's posted, we guarantee like a review within a certain number of days, and that's happens on a rolling basis. My question is that how we wanna do it, or are we looking to have a more defined, like, period where the grant period is open?
Cause most of the summer programs are already started.
Well, people may not just be targeting the summer, they may have things in the fall or the,
And I think that was my thinking behind it being a rolling.
well, maybe we could do a seasonal thing. A quarterly, because that would address each of the seasons, and that wouldn't, it's not necessarily, I'm just a little bit concerned about the rolling application process, because that puts us out there to have to add a lot of things to our plate, like what if we get a surplus of applications? And then that would have us, you know, it's not a defined period, so maybe we could do like quarterly submissions.
So, the other related thing there, right, is that I didn't explicitly ask, but the committee, right? So that could be the role of the committee, is, you know, those are the commissions that have committees for all sorts of things. Much like our commission meeting is every month, those committees meet once a month and they do meet publicly. If they don't have any applications to review, they just don't meet that month. And if they do, then they do that review at that monthly meeting. So that would be another way to control for what gets to us.
So this is what you're.
I think it would also help when people are thinking about applying, they can plan ahead. So we're like, this is when it's gonna be the application period, we're gonna be accepting them, and by this date, you will know. You know, like, we'll have a review period, a board period, you will know.
So this is June, so talking about getting ready to hit into the fall, then.
Yeah, I mean, we can work, you can break it down, Adam, right, by quarter, like January through, what is it, March or April? It's four quarters.
Yeah, but it's really, I can also come up with both, right? I think I think the pro of a quarterly review is it's certainly easier for us. I think and it's a little more predictable for us and probably may result in some better applications. I think the downside of it is kind of another barrier to like funds getting into the hands of people that are gonna do good things with them. And I think that's the only thing I wonder about is if we end up if some organization, right, like has an idea of something they wanna do that falls between our review period, it may be a fantastic idea, it may be something that we want to, you know, decide to support, but we would be sort of tying our hands to do that. If they're falling in between those periods.
Perhaps we should, I don't know what the term would be, but there could be something for emergency fund, you know, like, or last minute funding, but for the most part, people will be able to plan out over time if, once we start, standardizing what our process is, and people just need to plan. I mean, and it helps us in terms of forecasting and knowing what it would help with the budget, you know?
So you say no rolling, there's a set period for grants.
Yeah. I mean, if we
And
decide
you-
quarterly,
and
we
you know,
do
though,
3
that's-
times a year, we do bi-yearly, you know, it's up to us to decide what that time frame is, but I said quarterly because it's kind of more frequent than the biannual or 3 times a year.
And you know, I don't know, I just know ANC 6, who has a committee, but they've been operating that way for years, so they have the experience to, we don't know what we're gonna get. So, by having some kind of timeline,
So you're saying you're in agreement? or-
Review, yeah.
Okay.
or whatever the timeline is,
What,
be,
you're
it
just
could be,
saying have a timeline and a structured process.
right, cause even for our first year, I would say the first quarter only, January, February, March.
Well,
And see what we get.
So, just to put out some real dates before, because I think this is important for us to figure out together. So I was looking at my calendar, right, if we said applications are due 4 times a year, March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, December 31st. And I'm just throwing it out there, like, so if they are due on those dates, then we'll review them within a month.
A month, yeah.
And now review, does that mean the committee looked at them first, and then they bring them, they give a recommendation to us?
We don't know if the volunteers for the committee.
Right.
Well,
and
we
that's
have to define what that, is the process laid out here, like that the committee would look at it and then give it to us?
No, it's not, that's what I'm saying, I can go write something up, but it would also, if there are things you folks want, I'd
Okay,
rather
so
just
who
do
would
this
be
one.
the committee?
We have to decide that.
It would be residents. I mean, cause you talk about ANC 6, that the committee it has its own chairman, who's not a commissioner.
I think that's a good way to engage the community.
Yeah.
Are we okay with the idea of the March, June, September, December dates?
Say the dates again, Adam.
It's the end of each month, so March 31st, June 30th, September 30th, December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we said applications are due on those dates? They first go to a committee who will meet within 2 weeks of that deadline, who will then give us a recommendation. So for example, to use a real date, so the next, right, we've already passed June 30th, so if we were to do this for 2016, grant applications would be due September 30th. The grant committee would meet something like October 10th, where they would review it publicly and give us a recommendation. And then we would vote to approve or deny at the ANC meeting following that. Which would, given that, would be the November meeting. So it would basically be a 6-week turnaround.
That sounds reasonable.
Does that sound okay? Right. So I'll write that up.
That's actually fast. I mean, I work at NIH, so things roll slower. It's a good turn.
Okay, so I'll write that up, I'll bring that to the next meeting so that stuff is clearer. And I think from then, right, like then we need to do the work of getting the application in front of folks so that we get some good applications. And we'll need to form a committee.
She's already.
Okay.
So just to formalize that, I'm just gonna move that we table that. I don't think that requires any votes, is that, any objections to that? Okay, it's moved and seconded, all 4, please say aye.
Aye.
So aye. Alright, that motion passes.
Are we doing our time?
We are way over our time, but the last one, maybe quick, we'll see. So the last item on the agenda was the change in meeting location. So this is the last thing in your packet. I did not get any responses from anyone, aside from the places that I researched a ways back. So what you see on this page is sort of what I found out about Capitol Fringe, about Gallaudet, and then I filled in as best I could everything about the current location. I won't read all of this to you, but I will say that we should just be clear that there is a cost to both Gallaudet and Capitol Fringe. There is not a cost, of course, to using this space, but just to summarize at the very bottom, where those numbers are coming from. So, of course, NPE does not charge us for use of the space because it's a government building. What I did include in all 3 lines, just for sake of comparison, was sign language interpretation services, which I know I have heard requests for that many, many times. I think at different S&D meetings, I think you all may have heard that as well from what I've heard. So I included that in the NPD number just because if we wanted to have an interpreter at these meetings, that is certainly an option. And it sounds like we have the funds to do that if we wanted to in the budget. But other than that, NPD does not have a cost there. Gallaudet is willing to give us the space for free, just as NPD does, but they have an interest in getting their students more involved in local government and really want their students to be able to see how local government works. And so they've made a request that if they are going to donate the space for free, that we provide those interpretation services, and that there is a cost to that, and the estimate I have from them, that's about $300 per meeting. Per meeting, yep. And that assumes that that interpreter is here for about 2 hours. Several commissioners here, we did this at an S&D meeting a little, I guess, under a year ago, and I believe this was roughly the cost that the developer paid for that meeting. Then the last item is Capital Fringe, which is the most expensive option. They are also willing to donate the space, but they do require that we carry our own insurance as it is a private space. And the estimate from them is that that's roughly $200 per meeting. And I again included the interpretation services. They don't require that, but that is certainly an option. So if we were to do that, that is $500 per meeting.
The insurance, so that's just general liability insurance when if they have to address the building will be on the meeting.
Right.
On the commission.
Right, and it's worth noting on the back of this page, so Gallaudet has drafted, if we move away to a different location, Gallaudet just kind of did us the favor of drafting up a basic contract there. And it's just worth noting that they're not requiring us to carry liability insurance, but they did say, you know, the ANC is responsible for the space. If something gets damaged while we are using it, you know, we are responsible for it.
Because that's still on that insurance, so that covers damage to the property and if somebody trips and falls, that kind of liability.
Yep.
So that might be something you want to have in there.
It might be.
Because then we compare that to any place, so we have it.
Yeah, and I think that $200 was not specific to anything special.